Hello everyone, and welcome to Fresh Master Channel. Today, we are going to have some story from Reddit. But before we start, don't forget to subscribe, like the video if you enjoyed it, and leave a comment down below. These simple clips mean a lot to the future of this channel.
I thought things couldn't possibly get worse, but damn, I was dead wrong. The whole week had been an absolute train wreck. And to top it off, my boss calls me into his office to rip me a new one for someone else's screw-up. When I finally get home, my sister-in-law's damn car is blocking the driveway, and the neighbor kids had parked like idiots all over the street. I had to park 3 houses down. By the time I walked in the door, I was honestly just wondering why I even bothered anymore. Let me tell you about Susan, my wife's sister. We've never clicked, not from the moment I met her. She straight up hated my guts from day one, and I could never figure out why. And to make things worse, my wife, Janice, and I hadn't been getting along either. Hell, we hadn't even had sex in almost a month, no matter how hard I tried. So I grabbed the trash can to take it out back. And what do I hear? Music and laughter coming from the living room. I grab a beer and start heading toward them, hoping for some peace. But then I hear something that stops me dead in my tracks. God, he ducked me 3 times today, I heard. It wasn't Susan talking, it was Janice, my wife. Ever since Brandon came back last month, I can't get enough of him, she said, sounding all dreamy. Brandon? You gotta be kidding me. That's Janice's ex, the guy who bailed on her. I hear Susan asking, "So, what are you gonna do?" Janice's response was like a punch in the gut. Brandon wants me to move in with him. I'm getting a lawyer, filing for divorce. I'm taking half. We're in a community property state, so I'm getting what's mine. That's when I couldn't take it anymore. Numb as hell, I turned and walked straight out the door, heading to my car. The reality hit me like a ton of bricks. Janice wasn't just shutting me out, she was with someone else. And now, she was gunning for half of everything. The worst part? The state would probably give it to her. We'd been married for 3 years. Right after the wedding, Janice quit her job, and when she was home, she barely lifted a finger. I had a maid come in 3 times a week to clean up and do laundry. Janice? She'd cook dinner on those days, but the rest of the time? I either cooked or we just grabbed takeout. I know, you're probably thinking I was a sucker. But love messes with your head, right? She kept me happy with great sex. At least, that's what it used to be like, up until about a month ago. I lost my mom when I was 13 and my dad when I was 23, thanks to some drunk driver. My dad left me almost $2.5 million, and I made sure that cash grew with a solid broker. Janice tried to blow through every cent I made, but I kept my inheritance separate. Never touched it. But now she's after almost $1.5 million for, what, being unfaithful? And the worst part? I didn't make her sign a prenup. Stupid, right? So now she's looking into lawyers, and I've got some time to make my move. Sitting in my car, I saw Susan's car drive off. I fired up the engine, spun around, and headed back home. Janice wasn't there when I walked in, so I grabbed another beer and sat down to try to wrap my head around everything. "Hey, there you are, honey," Janice said as she walked into the kitchen. "Yeah, just one of those days," I said, forcing a smile. "I didn't order dinner," she said, like it was my problem. "That's cool. I'll just heat up leftovers," I said, keeping it cool on the outside while my mind was racing. She kissed my cheek, told me she was going to take a bath, and went upstairs. I thought, yeah, go ahead and wash away all the guilt. After she left, I ate some fried rice, cracked a couple more beers, and zoned out in front of the TV. About half an hour later, she came back downstairs, flopped on the couch, and started watching the movie with me. When it ended, she said she was tired and headed for bed. "Yeah, tired from all the lying and cheating," I muttered under my breath. "I'll join you in a bit," I said, staying behind to watch the news, though I wasn't really watching it. My mind was already on my next move. Saturday was yard work. Sunday, golf with the guys. And on Monday, I called my broker and had everything liquidated. Cashed in my 401k too, penalties be damned. By Thursday, I was done. I'd had enough. Told Janice I had a work emergency and needed to fly out. I packed 2 bags. Nothing fancy, nothing I couldn't ditch. When we moved into this house, I didn't bother unpacking much of my stuff. All that really mattered was kept away in storage. She picked the furniture, and honestly, I didn't give a damn about any of it. The one good thing, we were renting, so I didn't have any money tied up in this place. We just sold my condo, and now we were looking for a new place, but nothing met her standards. Of course, Friday morning, I kissed her on the cheek and walked out, bags in hand. Threw them in my Lexus, slammed the door, and took off. Didn't even look back. First stop, Jake's place. My old buddy, the only guy I trusted enough for something like this. He nearly lost his mind when I suggested we swap cars. I explained my situation, and in less than an hour, I was behind the wheel of a rebuilt SUV, headed west. Jake promised to stash my car somewhere safe for a while. No one would connect me to that SUV. I was disappearing without a trace. For the next 4 days, I did everything in cash. No cards, no digital footprints. I canceled all my accounts, erased every trail. My real money, safely stashed offshore where no one could touch it. I kept just enough on me in the SUV to get by. Motel rooms? Yeah, they were rough, cheap and grimy. But I didn't care. I didn't have much time to think about Janice. I was too focused on my next move, but every now and then my mind would drift back to her. I had loved her once. Hell, I wouldn't have married her if I hadn't. I thought about all the things I could have done differently, the signs I missed. But at the end of the day, she made her choice. She went back to Brandon, and I couldn't stop it. 2 truths hit me hard. She never really loved me, and I was a damn fool for marrying her. On the 5th day, I found myself at a diner in Montana, wondering what Janice was doing now that she'd seen all the credit cards were canceled. My thoughts were interrupted by an older couple talking at the next table. The man was saying he needed an extra hand on the farm but couldn't afford to hire anyone. After finishing my meal, I walked over. Sorry to interrupt, but I might be able to help. The man eyed me, skeptical. How? I can't pay you anything. What if I just need a place to crash in exchange for work? I suggested. He shot a look at his wife. Colleen, give us a minute outside, he said, standing up and waiting for me to follow. Outside, he sized me up. Who are you? Part of the Wilson Ranch? I raised my hands. Nah, just got here from Texas a few days ago. Thought maybe we could help each other. He was suspicious. If you're on the run from the law, we don't need that trouble. Not like that, I replied. I told him about Janice, the divorce, how I was just trying to keep what's mine. If you've got a place, I'll work for it. If you don't want me, no hard feelings. He studied me for a moment. If you're telling the truth, I'd be a fool not to give you a shot. But I'll warn you, the Wilsons want my land. They're pushing, but haven't crossed any lines yet. You might be stepping into more than you think. I'm willing to risk it, I said. He asked about my ranching experience. I told him I spent a few summers on my uncle's place, but I wasn't a cowboy. He shook my hand. I'm Bill. He said, you're in. We went back to the diner, and Bill introduced me to his wife. Colleen, this is Carson. He's going to help out if he can handle it. She stood, offering her hand. Nice to meet you, Carson. Nice to meet you too, Ma, I said, trying to sound casual. Call me Colleen. Don't need all that formal stuff around here, she replied, her Irish accent soft. I instantly liked Colleen. Bill suggested we head back to the ranch. Before leaving town, he stopped at a general store. You might want to grab some clothes for ranch work, he said. Inside, he got a warm welcome from the store owner. I picked out a coat and some Western boots, enough for now. It was about a 20-mile drive to the ranch. The sign at the gate read, Rocking Bee Ranch, Bill's brand. Another mile down a private road, we reached the main house. It was 2 stories, well-kept and freshly painted. There was a barn and a few outbuildings behind it. Bill's truck was loaded with bags of groceries from their weekly town run. I grabbed the bags and followed them into the kitchen. In 2 trips, the truck was unloaded. Bill told me to drive around back. There was a small cabin for me. He pointed out another cabin nearby where Sam stayed. Sam's out making rounds. You'll meet him later, he said. I settled into the cabin. It was small but clean. 1 room, a bed, a table, a stove, and a stone shower. Not fancy, but it worked. At least it kept me hidden from Janice. When I stepped outside, Bill was waiting in his truck. Hop in, he said. He showed me the ranch. Almost 6,000 acres with a couple hundred set aside for winter feed. The back part of the ranch was hilly with forests and mountains, and a stream you could only reach on horseback. Bill told me he used to have 3 full-time hands, but now it was just Sam, who'd worked on the ranch for 30 years. When we do roundups, we hire extra help, he said. He dropped me back at the cabin around dusk. Oh, by the way, Bill said, I saw you've got a laptop. I've got a satellite connection. You can use the internet. Supper's at the main house. We eat at 6. I set up my laptop and checked my emails. Jake had messaged me. Janice had reported me missing to the cops. Something to think about. Jake was the only one who knew I'd left, and even he didn't know where I was. At 6, I walked over to the main house and knocked. Bill called me in. Colleen was cooking, and Bill was talking to a man I figured was Sam. Bill waved me over. Sam, this is Carson. He's the new hand I mentioned. We'll see how he handles it after a day's work, Bill said, grinning. Sam gave me a big smile and extended his hand. He was tall, about 6'3", and built like Bill, tough, like he'd spent his life working hard. He was African American. I shook his hand, feeling the strength in his grip. Well, young man, Sam said, let's see if you like it here. I could use the help. I was 28, half his age, so he called me young. I'll give it my best shot, I said. Colleen called us to dinner. Bill and Colleen sat at opposite ends of the table. Sam and I sat across from each other. The table was loaded with pork chops, mashed potatoes, green beans, and homemade biscuits. We don't eat fancy here, Carson, Colleen said. But there's plenty, and it's filling. It looks great, I replied. During dinner, I asked Bill if he'd lived here all his life. Yep, he said. Granddad started the ranch, then my dad. Now it's mine and Colleen's. When I was younger, I wasn't sure she'd stick around. Had to fight off every guy to keep her. Bill looked at Colleen, and I saw the love in his eyes. She smiled back. Bill, you're the only man I ever wanted, she said. I just had to make sure you really wanted me. Bill grinned. The happiest days of my life? The day she said yes, the day she married me, and the day our daughter was born. I hadn't seen a daughter around, so I asked. Colleen noticed my look. She's away finishing her doctorate in veterinary sciences. She'll be home in a couple of months. We're looking forward to that. Bill added, having a vet in the family should save us some money. After dinner, I tried to help clear the dishes, but Colleen insisted it was her job. Bill mentioned breakfast was at 5:30 and work started at 6. As Sam and I were leaving, I spotted today's New York Times on the counter, likely picked up by Bill in town. Can I borrow the front page? I asked. Bill said sure, and once we were outside, I asked Sam to step into my cabin for a second. I pulled out my digital camera and showed him how to use it, asking him to snap a picture of me holding the front page. He seemed curious, but didn't ask anything. He did ask if I had an alarm clock, and I said I had one. I'll see you in the morning, he said before heading out. Back in the cabin, I downloaded the photo and wrote an email to the police in my old town, saying I was fine and had left on my own. I kept the location vague by using a national newspaper. I sent it to Jake, telling him to use a local coffee shop to forward it and my work email to the police without leaving a trace. I hoped it would keep me off any missing persons lists. I slept like a rock. The next morning I was up at 5, showered, and ready to meet Sam at the main house. After breakfast, Bill told Sam to put me to work replacing fence posts in the hills. Sam took me to the barn, pointed out a horse and saddle, and I saddled up a big brown mare. We loaded up 2 mules with fence posts and tools. Bill joined us with a Winchester Model 94 and a scabbard. We only use this if we need to put down a sick cow, he explained. We mounted up and rode out, heading for the hills along the creek. As we rode, Sam and I talked. I told him about how I ended up in Montana, and he shared his story. He'd married young, but his wife cheated on him, and in a fit of rage, he almost eliminated the guy. He went to prison for 5 years. Bill was the only one who gave me a shot when I got out, Sam said. Been here ever since. Sam had nothing but good things to say about Bill and Colleen. After about half an hour, we reached the fence. Sam pointed out which posts needed replacing, about every third one. He stayed with me while I replaced the first 2 to make sure I was doing it right. Work till about 4, then head back. Get the animals taken care of, and we'll eat at 6, Sam said. Follow the stream back. You won't get lost. I replaced posts until noon, then took a break, and ate the pork chop sandwiches Colleen had packed for me. After finishing, I got back to work. By 4, I'd replaced almost all the posts, except a couple the mules had carried up. I led them back to the stream and followed it down, stopping at a natural pool where the stream flowed in and out. It was the most peaceful spot on the ranch. Back at the barn, I unsaddled the animals and fed them. Sam came into bed down his horse, and we both rushed to get cleaned up for dinner. We had steaks that night, and I was wiped out. I barely said anything during dinner and went straight to bed after. I woke up sore as hell. My hands were killing me from the post hole digger, and every muscle in my body ached. There's a huge difference between a 2-hour gym session and a full day of hard work. As I limped into the kitchen, Bill and Sam chuckled, and even Colleen couldn't hide her grin. Despite the soreness, I was starving and dug into my breakfast. Ready for more fencing? Bill asked with a smile. I groaned. Yes, sir, Bill laughed. I think you've earned a break. Today you're riding rounds with Sam. I nodded, grateful. We started by cleaning the stalls and replacing the hay. After getting the animals settled, we jumped in the pickup and headed out for the ranch inspection. We were checking to make sure no cows were down or separated from their calves. Sam knew the ranch like the back of his hand. After 30 years, it was second nature to him. We reached the far end of the ranch, and Sam stopped the truck. He saw something on the hill and handed me his binoculars. I looked and spotted 2 calves alone. "Where's their moms?" I asked. "Over there," Sam said, pointing to a few cows near the trees. "Looks like they wandered off. We'll have to bring them back." "Are we hiking up there?" I asked. "Nah, too far. Let's get the horses," Sam replied. Sam radioed Bill and told him about the calves. When we got back to the barn, Bill had already saddled 2 horses and loaded them into a trailer. "Let's go," Bill said. We drove close to the tree line, unloaded the horses, and rode up. Sam knew the land like the back of his hand. We got behind the calves and slowly pushed them back. When we got to the trees, I laughed as the calves ran straight to their moms. "They ran right to them and started nursing," I said, chuckling. The cows were calm, letting the calves feed. It reminded me of how different things were growing up. That night, we had fried chicken, corn, and mashed potatoes. I was feeling better, so I talked more. Colleen told me about her parents. "They moved from Ireland when I was 5. My dad loved the Old West stories, so we ended up in Montana," she explained, mentioning the Irish influence in her speech. The next day, I got back to replacing fence posts. After breakfast, Sam helped me load the mules, but this time, I went solo. I followed the stream and got to where I needed to be. The day was easier than the first, and by 4 p.m., I was done. I worked on the stalls before cleaning up for dinner. On the 4th day, I helped Sam fix up some buildings. The next day, more posts. The next 2 months flew by. I was in the best shape of my life. Sam, Bill, and I had a routine. Sam took Saturdays off, Bill took Sundays, and Mondays were my day to rest, do laundry, or run into town. I had grown close to everyone. Sam was easy to get along with, and we often sat and talked after dinner. I respected Bill. He was hardworking and honest. Colleen was sweet, but had a lot of fire in her. Together, they made a great team. On Friday, Colleen told me her daughter would be home next week. It was my turn to check the cattle that day. I saddled up and rode into the hills. Around 4 p.m., I got to the stream and followed it down to the pool below the waterfall. I stopped, took off my shirt, and knelt by the water to cool off. Then I heard a horse whinny and looked to see a rider coming. At first, I thought it was Colleen, but it was a younger woman, Caitlin. She stopped and asked, "Who are you and what are you doing here?" "I'm Carson. I work here," I said. "I don't believe you," she replied. "My dad said he couldn't afford another hand." I was getting annoyed. "Yeah, I heard that. I guess that's why I'm laughing all the way to the bank every payday." She gave me a cold look, turned her horse, and kicked it into gear. I chuckled, put my shirt back on, and rode back to the barn. Later, I found out there was a mix-up. Caitlin thought she was coming home next week, but she showed up earlier. After spending the day with her parents, she went for a ride to the waterfall. Guess I was old news, and Bill and Colleen had forgotten to mention me. As I got back to the barn, I saw Caitlin's red hair disappearing inside. I dismounted and tied up my horse. Caitlin must have been looking for Bill and finally found him in the barn. I could hear her voice clearly.
"Who's that guy up at the waterfall?" she asked. Bill thought for a second and said, "That must have been Carson." "He said he works here," Caitlin said. "But last time I was here, you said you couldn't afford another hand." Bill shrugged.
"Oh, well, he's right. He works here. How much he gets paid isn't your business." "I still run this ranch, Bill," Caitlin snapped. "But he said you pay him so much, he laughs all the way to the bank," she shot back. By then, I had walked in. She had her back to me, but Bill saw me. He grinned and asked, "Is that true, Carson? If you think you're overpaid, I can fix that." Caitlin spun around and locked eyes with me. I took off my hat, scratched my head, and said, "Well, I wouldn't want to take advantage of you, Bill. How much you planning to cut my pay?" Bill and I both cracked up. Caitlin just stared at us, clearly not amused. Bill finally said, "Just so you know, Carson stays in the cabin next to Sam's." Caitlin shot back. "And he eats your mother's fine cooking," Bill added. "So you're saying you're not paying him?" she asked. "Why would he work for nothing?" Bill answered. "He's got his reasons. Not my place to tell you." I jumped in. "Working for a taste of your mom's cooking is worth a lot. And I don't think she'd appreciate you saying that." It's nothing, she muttered, glaring at me before storming out. Bill shook his head. She reminds me of her mother when she was young. I didn't think I'd ever marry Colleen. At supper, Caitlin joined us, sitting next to Sam. She shot me another cold look when I walked in. I waited until everyone had filled their plates before speaking. Your mom told me you finished your doctorate in vet medicine, I said, trying to be friendly. Yeah, she muttered, barely looking up. I pressed on. Sam said there's only one other vet around, and he's over 30 miles away. You're going to be a big help around here. Caitlin looked up at me, her eyes softening a bit. Yeah, Dr. Harrison. He's swamped, always in more than one place at once. Colleen smiled. I agree. Caitlin will be a great help. Caitlin spent the rest of dinner chatting with her parents and Sam. She didn't talk to me, and I didn't force it. It was her homecoming, after all. I excused myself as soon as I finished eating and went back to my cabin. I checked my email when I got there. Jake had sent me an update. He talked to a buddy on the police force and asked if I was still listed as missing. The cop said everything had been dropped after they got the email and picture I'd sent. As for Janice, Brandon had ditched her once he realized I'd disappeared with all the money. She couldn't afford the house rent anymore and was stuck waiting tables in a city apartment. No lawyer, no money for one. It was ironic. She married me for my money, and Brandon had just used her for the same thing. I was still replacing fence posts, but now it was only every third or fourth day. I worked where I could drive the truck, which made hauling posts easier than using the mules. The morning after Caitlin came home, I loaded up the truck and drove to where I'd left off. When lunchtime came, I headed to the truck, but realized I'd forgotten my lunch. Colleen always made sure we had one if we were working far from the house, but I must have spaced it. I could have driven back, but I figured skipping one meal wouldn't hurt. About 30 minutes later, I was setting a post and attaching the wire when I heard a truck coming. I turned and saw one of the ranch trucks stop just as I finished with the post. Caitlin stepped out holding a small sack like the ones Colleen used for our lunches. Mama said you forgot your lunch, she said, handing me the bag. I took it from her and said, Thanks, Caitlin. That was real kind of you. I opened the bag and saw 2 sandwiches. I grabbed one and offered the other to Caitlin, but she shook her head. I shrugged and sat on the truck tailgate to eat. She stood about 5 feet away, just staring at me. I ate, not looking at her. Why are you here? She finally asked. I turned, messing with her a bit. You can't tell anyone I robbed a bank and stashed the money. I'm laying low here until the heat's off. Her eyes went wide for a second, then she glared. You're a real clown, she muttered, turning to leave. I called her name when she was halfway to her truck. She stopped, slowly turning around. I married a woman who didn't love me, just wanted what I could give her, I said. I ended up here because I needed a break. Just wanted to get away for a while. She stared at me, and I think she believed me this time. She nodded and walked away without another word. As she drove off, I thought about what Bill said about Caitlin being like her mom when she was young. He'd tamed her, but I figured it was their love that held it together. It hadn't been 24 hours since I met Caitlin, and I couldn't imagine any man taming that fiery redhead. Dinner was pretty much the same as the night before. Caitlin talked with her parents and Sam. I wasn't in the mood to talk. She didn't know me, and we didn't have much in common. Just as we were finishing, there was a knock on the door. Bill went to answer it and came back with a guy about my age. Tall, dark, and handsome, just like in the movies. Caitlin jumped up and hugged him, excited. It was clear they knew each other. They talked about how long it had been since they'd seen each other. A few minutes later, another knock, and Bill brought in another good-looking guy. He got the same warm welcome from Caitlin. I remembered Bill's words about having to fight off every guy to win Colleen. Caitlin was just as much of a prize as her mom, at least in looks. I excused myself and headed back to my cabin. Mentally, I wished the 2 guys luck. If Caitlin turned out like her mom, whoever won her heart would be lucky. The next day, I took the pickup and rode the ranch. By the time I finished my rounds, something didn't sit right. I went back and got Sam, and we checked the ranch again. There were cattle all over, but it felt like we were missing a few herds. We decided to saddle up the next day and check the hills. Bill agreed with our plan, and it rained that night, making things trickier. The next morning, we loaded the horses into a trailer and set off. Sam and I rode all day covering the land. We found 5 stray herds. Bill met us at the far side, and we loaded up the horses and headed back. We figured we just needed to be more vigilant. At dinner, Caitlin had another visitor. Her mother muttered about that being the 3rd guy today. Word had clearly gotten out that she was back, and guys were crawling out of the woodwork. Over the next 4 days, we kept an eye on the herd. Everything seemed fine, except for the original missing cattle. Caitlin's suitors kept visiting. She'd been home a week and hadn't spoken to me since the day she brought my lunch. On the 5th day, I told Bill I wanted to check the property line through the hills. We'd already covered the pastures and saw no sign of the missing cattle. Sam dropped me off on the west side, where Bill's ranch borders the Wilson Ranch. About halfway to the southwest corner, I found 3 fresh sets of horse tracks crossing the fence. I checked the fence post and noticed the staples were loose on 5 of them, barely holding the wire up. If you removed the staples, you could lower the wire and cross. I followed the tracks and soon saw 3 horses tied to a tree near the waterfall. I dismounted, tied my horse, and grabbed the rifle from its scabbard. When I reached the horses, I saw boot prints leading downstream. I crept to the edge of the waterfall and froze. There was Caitlin, without anything, swimming in the clear water. Damn, she had a damn hot body. I couldn't help but notice, but then I saw movement in the trees to her right. I quickly scanned the area and spotted 1 guy on the right and 2 more coming from the left. I raised my rifle and fired, hitting near the guy on the right. Another shot sent dirt flying near the 2 on the left. Caitlin screamed, and I stood up so they could all see me. "On your bellies now. I won't miss next time," I yelled. "Caitlin, stay where you are." She didn't see the men, just me standing there with a rifle, and she covered herself, clearly scared. 1 guy on the left looked like he was going to run, but I shot again, the bullet blasting the tree next to him. He dropped to the ground. Caitlin saw where I shot and screamed again. I started counting, and by 1, the other 2 dropped to the ground. I told them to put their hands behind their heads. They did as I said. I turned to Caitlin. "Get out of the water and get dressed." She hesitated, but I growled, "Just do it." She was shaking, but walked out of the pool. She had her back to me, but I couldn't take my eyes off her. She put on her jeans and shirt, then rode off on her horse. Once she was gone, I ordered the men to get up and lie back down. Only when all 3 were on the ground did I breathe a little easier. Time for a bluff. "What am I going to do with you 3? Maybe shoot you in the legs and watch you bleed out." The men begged for their lives. I gave them a cold look. "Even if I spare you, Caitlin's dad will make sure you pay unless you want to confess something better to the sheriff. Like cattle rustling, that might get you a chance at life." The smallest one cracked. "Yeah, we did it. Wilson said stealing from Buckman would get him the land." His friend tried to stop him, but he shrugged it off. "He ain't dying for cows." I bought some time, knowing Caitlin would be back soon and Bill would want answers. Sure enough, 45 minutes later, Bill and Sam showed up on horseback. I waved them over. "What the hell's going on?" Bill asked. "Looks like Wilson's hands paid us a visit," I said. "Tracked them from the fence to here. Caitlin was swimming, and these 3 were sneaking up on her." I pushed the rifle barrel into the smallest guy's neck. "This one's got something he wants to tell you." He gulped and confessed. "We took cattle. Wilson forced us." Bill tipped his hat back and grinned. "You know, back when my granddad ran this ranch, they'd hang horse thieves and cattle rustlers. Justice was simpler then. Too bad we have to be civilized now." Bill and I marched the men down, rifles ready. Sam brought up the rear, tying their horses together. When we got to the barn, we put them in separate stalls, leaving the doors open so we could keep an eye on them. Bill called the sheriff, and Sam and I stood guard. In 30 minutes, the sheriff arrived. Bill briefed him, and I suggested bringing the small guy out for questioning. The sheriff agreed. I pulled him out, and at first the guy hesitated, but soon enough, he cracked. The sheriff looked at Bill. "Seems like a trespassing case. A waste of my time, but I'll let you handle it. Forget I saw them." The rustler's eyes went wide, and he spilled everything. Backup arrived, and they found nearly 100 stolen cattle on Wilson's land. By nightfall, Wilson and his men were arrested. We didn't sit down for dinner until well after 9. Caitlin was at the table but didn't look up. Bill asked, "What were you doing out there?" "I was swimming," she muttered. "Didn't think anyone would be spying on me." I cut in, "Caitlin, I wasn't spying. I tracked their horse prints. And think about what could have happened if I hadn't been there. Those 3 weren't planning a nice chat when they saw you." Colleen added, "Thank goodness you showed up, Carson. I don't even want to think about it." We finished our meal quickly, aware of the early start tomorrow. As I headed out toward my cabin, Caitlin called me. I stopped and turned, expecting gratitude, but she snapped, "So, did you enjoy the view today?" I couldn't help myself. Let's just say I'd be lying if I said it wasn't breathtaking. Caitlin huffed and marched off toward the house. I couldn't help but smirk. There was something about me that seemed to keep her interested. The next day, Bill went into town to file charges against Wilson. Sam and I spent the day painting out buildings. Caitlin skipped lunch with us, which suited me just fine. Bill came back in the afternoon and updated us at dinner. Wilson and his crew would be out on bail, but he didn't expect any more trouble. Then he joked, "Next time Caitlin swims, maybe take Carson along, for protection." Caitlin's face turned red, and she rushed out. Bill and Sam laughed. Even Colleen joined in. Bill added, "You're worth every penny, Carson. Wilson could have put us under." 3 days later, Bill got the news. We loaded the horses and headed to Wilson's Flying Doll Ranch with a sheriff's escort. Colleen drove the truck back. Once we had the cattle, I loosened the fence to let them cross. After securing it, we rode back, feeling good. Caitlin was waiting on her vet license, but for now, she was only working on her dad's ranch. I'd catch her eye at meals and give her a grin, which always made her blush. 2 weeks after the waterfall, I ran into Caitlin in the barn. "Been swimming lately?" I asked. She walked right up to me, glaring. "Why are you such a pain?" she snapped. I grinned. "Why are you such a pain?" She tried to slap me, but I caught her wrist. She swung with the other hand, but I stopped that too, pushing her back against me. I leaned in. "If you were mine, I'd spank you." She pulled back. "You wouldn't dare." I let go, and she stumbled backward. "It's not that I wouldn't dare," I said. "I'm not wasting time on another woman who doesn't care about me." She glared, then stormed out. I left too, not wanting to stick around. We didn't speak again until dinner. She shot me a look, but stayed quiet. I couldn't figure her out. My marriage to Janice had shown me I wasn't great with women. The next day, Bill came into the barn. "I heard you and Caitlin had a bit of a fight yesterday," he said. I nodded. "Yeah," Bill grinned. "She's confused. First, she thought you were here for some reason. Then you saved the ranch. Now she doesn't get why you're not chasing her like the other guys. Caitlin's used to guys falling for her. Just don't let her push you away. You're welcome here as long as you want." I sighed. "Thanks, Bill. I'll ease up on her." He left, and I went back to work. If Caitlin wanted to understand me, we needed to talk. Caitlin didn't join us for dinner. No one mentioned it. The next day, I stuck to my routine. Even on my day off, I woke up at 5. After breakfast, I did my laundry in Bill's big washer and chatted with Colleen while it ran. Caitlin walked in for breakfast, which wasn't like her. Colleen asked about my plans, and I told her I was thinking of heading to town. I offered to grab anything she needed, and Caitlin spoke up. "Could I ride with you? I'm heading to the store, too. Seems like a waste for both of us to drive." Surprised, I said, "Sure, I'll be ready in about an hour and a half." She said she'd be ready and went back to eating, while Colleen and I kept talking. When I stepped out later, Caitlin came out behind the house, looking great in a turquoise sundress that made her red hair pop. She stood, holding the passenger door open. I couldn't help but watch as she slid in. We drove, and for the first part of the trip, she stayed quiet, watching the countryside. Then she said, "I thought you were going to kiss me yesterday." I glanced over, but saw her looking out the window. Well, while that would have been nice, I don't kiss women who aren't into it," I replied. I saw her head whip around, and she stared at me. She stayed quiet, but kept glancing my way. When we got to the store, we went in. I grabbed some jeans and shirts, and she picked up a few things for her mom. An hour later, we finished shopping. I suggested we stop for lunch, and she agreed. We pulled into the diner, the same one where I met Bill and Colleen. We sat across from each other, eating in silence. I almost wished I'd just gone back to the ranch. Just then, 3 guys walked in. 2 of them were the same guys who had shown up for Caitlin before. They came straight to our table, sitting on either side of her, while one stood behind me. I stood up and motioned for the guy behind me to sit at another table. When the waitress brought our food, I had her put mine at the new table. I ate quickly, ignoring their conversation. After a few minutes, I stood up. "I'm going to hit the hardware store," I said, cutting into their talk. "I'll swing back by later." Caitlin pushed her plate back and stood up. "Nice seeing you guys, but we're going." One of the guys offered her a ride, but she declined, following me out. On the way to the hardware store, Caitlin stayed in the car, clearly pissed. The silence was thick as we drove back. Turning into the long driveway, Caitlin asked, "Why'd you move to the other table?" I glanced at her. "Well, I figured you'd rather hang with your friends. I didn't want to be in the middle of their competition for your attention." "You're an a-hole," she snapped. I didn't respond. Didn't need to. Pulling up to the house, She grabbed the bags and stormed in without a word to her mom. Colleen looked at me. "What happened?" she asked. I shrugged. "Guess I'm an a-hole." Colleen chuckled, walking over to me. "I've never seen anyone get to Caitlin like you do." I stared, confused. "I don't know about that," I said. After stowing my new clothes in my cabin, I decided to get some fresh air. I saddled up a horse and rode out. I ended up at the waterfall, sitting by the edge and staring at the calm water. I stayed there for a while until Caitlin rode up on horseback and got off. Not wanting her to think I was spying, I tossed a rock into the water. She looked around, spotting me. Instead of leaving, she rode up to me, tied her horse, and walked toward me. I stood, stepping back from the edge. "You're an a-hole," she said, stopping right in front of me. "And you're still a pain," I shot back. I didn't wait for her to slap me. I grabbed her waist and kissed her quickly, then tried to step away. She grabbed my arm and pulled me back in, kissing me hard. One kiss led to another, and before I knew it, our clothes were off and we were tangled in each other. After a while, we slowed down, catching our breath. We got dressed, mounted up, and rode back down to the barn. Without saying a word, Caitlin walked to the main house. I returned to my cabin, still in a daze. I slipped into the shower, realizing I felt way more for Caitlin than I let on before. I barely had time to get dressed before heading to dinner. Bill, Colleen, and Sam were already there, but Caitlin wasn't. When she walked in, though, she sat next to me instead of Sam. Bill and Colleen exchanged looks, and Caitlin just smiled sweetly. She was in a good mood and didn't explain why, even though her parents were clearly curious. After dinner, she helped Colleen clean up, and Sam and I headed to our cabins. I was just about to settle into bed when I heard a knock. It was Caitlin, and I was only in my boxers. I opened the door, and she stepped in, guiding me back to bed. We had a quiet night together. The next morning, I woke to my 5 a.m. alarm. I groggily got out of bed, kissed Caitlin on the head, and left the cabin. At breakfast, I could feel Bill and Colleen's eyes on me. I wondered if they knew what Caitlin had been up to last night. After breakfast, I loaded up the truck to work on fence posts, getting some time to think. It had only been 3 months since I left my wife, but it felt like a lifetime. I thought about Bill, Colleen, Sam, and Caitlin. Then I thought about Caitlin again. Could I find the kind of love her parents had? Around lunchtime, I realized I'd forgotten my lunch. As I stood there, I heard a truck coming fast. Caitlin jumped out, running toward me with a bag in hand. She kissed me quickly before handing it to me, and I kissed her back, not even thinking about the meal. I didn't set as many posts that day, but I definitely set my post in her a few times. After our moments together, we talked. I told her about my ex-wife betraying me. "I'm not leaving unless you tell me to," I assured her. She went home after that, and I finished my work. After showering and changing, I walked into the kitchen to find Caitlin sitting next to me again, just as before. During dinner, a knock came at the door. Bill opened it, and in came the guy who had first called on Caitlin. He immediately asked her if she wanted to go for a drive, clearly asking her on a date. "I don't think my boyfriend would like that," Caitlin said, leaning over to kiss me on the cheek. The guy quickly left, embarrassed. Caitlin's dad, Bill, and Sam all smiled, and I could tell Caitlin had made it clear she was with me now. The next few days, no more guys came calling. Caitlin had made it clear she wasn't available. I helped her with a loan issue for her vet business. The bank wouldn't give her the loan without collateral, and she didn't want to ask her dad. I told her I'd work on it, and a couple of days later, I had a solution. I set up a fake loan company and got her a loan, which she was thrilled about. She asked why it had such a low interest rate, and I told her it was from a philanthropic group supporting local businesses. I knew she wouldn't just take the money from me directly, so I worked it out this way. With her new van set up as a mobile vet office, word spread fast, and local ranchers started calling for her services. She spent many nights with me at my cabin, and though her parents knew, they didn't mind. It took 3 months for Wilson and his crew to face trial. The smallest guy turned state's witness and got probation. The others got prison time. Wilson got 10 years and a $50,000 fine. Once he was locked up, I looked into his ranch. With no family and all his workers in jail, the place was left in ruins. I had an idea of what I could do next, but I had to take care of some unfinished business first. It was time to finalize my divorce. I couldn't stand the thought of Janice getting half of my money, so I called Jake to help again. Instead of emailing, I asked him to talk to her and tell her I was ready to settle for $50,000 to divorce. If she turned it down, she'd get nothing, and I'd never speak to her again. At first, she played dumb, asking why I left and why I wouldn't come back. Jake eventually told her I knew about her affair with Brandon, and she stopped pretending. Still working as a waitress and broke, she took the offer. I needed to go back to Texas and get a lawyer for the divorce papers. Caitlin wasn't happy about it, but I told her I needed to finish things and promised to return. She insisted on driving me to the airport and picking me up. I left with one suitcase, leaving my car and most of my stuff behind. Jake picked me up at the airport, and I stayed with him while calling Caitlin every night. By Friday, the papers were ready. Jake took Janice to the lawyer, and after signing the divorce, she got a $10,000 check. I never had to face her. Then I realized I had sentimental stuff in storage, my parents' heirlooms, yearbooks, and other memories. I didn't want to leave them, so I rented a van, loaded everything up, and drove it all back. Caitlin was surprised when I told her I wasn't flying back, but she got excited once I explained I was bringing back what mattered to me. 3 days of driving later, I finally arrived back at Rocking Bee Ranch. Caitlin gave me a warm welcome, and we spent the night together, exhausted but happy. With that part of my plan done, I shifted focus to Wilson. I made several trips to the prison to convince him to sell me his ranch. At first, he didn't want to, but I pointed out he'd be stuck in prison for years, and his ranch would fall apart without anyone to run it. Eventually, he agreed, needing something to start over with once released. Next, I got the financing. I moved my money back into the country, making sure Janice wouldn't mess things up. I struck a deal with Wilson for $5 million, a steal for the property. I put down $500,000 and financed the rest. Everything stayed quiet. Only Caitlin and Bill knew what I was up to. I set up a corporation and registered the land under its name. I hired a crew to manage the ranch and decided I'd be an absentee owner for now, but I'd be reachable by phone. The final step was remodeling the main house, a 5-bedroom place that needed a lot of work. Caitlin wasn't thrilled with my secrecy, but our relationship grew stronger every day. Her vet business was doing great, but she stayed happy and busy. I almost told her what I was doing. One day after checking the house progress, Caitlin cornered me. "What the hell is going on, Carson? Are you seeing someone else?" she demanded. "No," I said quickly. "There's no one else. Just trust me. I have things to take care of." "I'll tell you soon, I promise." She searched my face, then said, "Okay, but you better spill soon or I'll kick your A." I pulled her in and kissed her, feeling all the love I had for her. As the first signs of spring began to show and calving season officially started, the main house renovation was finally completed. It felt like the perfect moment to set my plan into motion. The timing couldn't have been better. One afternoon, I asked Caitlin to take a drive with me. When we were out on the road, I casually said, "I've been thinking, maybe it's time for me to leave the Rocking Bee Ranch." The second the words left my mouth, her eyes filled with tears. Her voice trembled as she looked at me and she said, "But I promised I wouldn't leave." Her reaction hit me harder than I expected, and I could tell she wasn't prepared for this conversation. I had carefully set everything up so that we were right at the entrance to the old Flying Doll Ranch. I made a quick turn onto the private road, and as the truck rolled down it, I said, "I'm not planning on going too far." Caitlin gave me a puzzled look and started scanning the surroundings, clearly confused. I wasn't even sure she had fully grasped what I'd just said. After a few moments, she finally asked, "What are we doing here on Wilson's land?" I waited until we pulled up to the house before I answered. The moment we stopped, I turned to her with a grin and said, "Come on, I want to show you something." I stepped out of the truck, went around to her side, and opened the door for her. As I helped her out, I took her hand and led her toward the front door, then pushed it open. Her confusion was still apparent as she asked again, "What the hell are we doing here?" "We could get in trouble." I laughed lightly and reassured her, "Relax, Wilson doesn't own this place anymore. Let's just look around." I could see she was still skeptical, but I added with a smile, "I just want to know what you think of the house." We walked upstairs and checked out the bedrooms, then went back down. The house was huge with a big living room, a cozy den with beautiful wood paneling, 2 rooms set up as offices, and a kitchen that I could tell Caitlin was falling for right away. The only room with furniture was the one I'd planned on turning into my office. The rest of the house was a blank canvas, waiting for Caitlin to make it her own. "So what do you think?" I asked, watching her take everything in. She looked around thoughtfully and said, "It's really nice." I didn't stop there. "Do you think you could live here?" I asked. Her eyes narrowed, and I could tell she was starting to get frustrated. "What the hell is going on?" she asked, her voice sharp with confusion. That's when I dropped down on one knee, reached into my jacket pocket, and pulled out the ring. "Wilson doesn't own this ranch anymore," I said, my heart pounding in my chest. "I do, and I'm asking if you could live here as my wife." She stared at me, completely stunned. You own the house? She asked, her voice filled with disbelief. I nodded, my excitement bubbling over. Yeah, I do. She gasped, her face lighting up as she screamed, Yes! It was the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. I pulled the engagement ring out of my pocket and held it up. For a moment, her expression changed, and her eyes filled with tears. I thought I had maybe messed up, but before I could even think about it too much, she threw herself at me, knocking me onto my back, covering my face with kisses. I smiled, overwhelmed, as she pulled her hand out, ready for me to slip the ring on her finger. The rest of the house, which had once seemed so empty, now felt full of possibility. Caitlin was running from room to room, her excitement growing with every corner she turned. I waited patiently until she came running back to me, her face practically glowing. The house is amazing. I love it, she said, throwing her arms around me. Still holding her, I led her through the house to a hallway that had 2 doors leading into different rooms. These 2 rooms are offices, I explained. One's for you to run your business and the other's for me. Caitlin kissed me long and deep in response, then followed me into the office. I pulled out a large piece of paper and spread it out on the desk. It was a sketch of the ranch's entrance with the words Double C Ranch written across the top. She picked it up, examining it closely. What does the double C stand for? She asked, looking up at me. I smiled, feeling a sense of pride. It stands for Carson and Caitlin Ranch, I said. She froze for a moment, her face softening as tears welled up in her eyes. Before I knew what was happening, she was pulling at my shirt, eager to be closer to me. I helped her take off her clothes, and she climbed onto the desk, wrapping herself around me. We spent the next few hours celebrating our love, right there in the office. In the days that followed, we made love in every room of the house, leaving our mark on every corner. When we finally got dressed and pulled ourselves together, I said it was time to tell her parents the news. Caitlin was so happy she practically floated out to the truck. We got back to the house just after 6, and Bill, Colleen, and Sam were already sitting down for dinner. We walked into the kitchen together, and Caitlin raised her hand, showing off her engagement ring as she squealed, "We're getting married!" Colleen jumped up and rushed over to hug her daughter, while Bill and Sam shook my hand and gave me a few hearty pats on the back. Then, Colleen pulled me in for a big hug, and Caitlin hugged her father and Sam. Once things calmed down, we all sat down to eat. Caitlin waited until everyone had their food, then casually dropped a bombshell. "Of course, this means we'll be moving," she said almost nonchalantly. Bill, Colleen, and Sam all looked at her, their eyes wide. "What?" they exclaimed in unison. Caitlin turned to me, silently urging me to explain. I cleared my throat and said, "Well, Bill, you remember how Wilson wanted to combine his ranch with yours? I was thinking it might actually be a good idea." Bill shot up from the table, furious. "There's no way in hell the flying doll is getting my ranch," he shouted. I laughed and waved my hand, trying to calm him down. "It's not the flying doll anymore," I said. "It's the Double C Ranch, and the new owners are sitting right here at your table." He furrowed his brow. "What are you talking about?" I smiled, enjoying the moment. "I bought out Wilson. The ranch is mine now. It's Double C, Carson and Caitlin." Colleen's face lit up as she put 2 and 2 together. "I thought if we combined the 2 ranches, we could run them together and we'd split the profits 50-50ths. Bill thought about it for a second before he spoke. "But the Double C Ranch is way bigger than my ranch. It brings in a lot more money." I nodded, acknowledging the truth in his words. "That's true, but you've been doing this your whole life. I need your help. What I'm offering is for us to be equal partners. You'll be in charge of the operations, and you get the final say on everything. Plus, it's part Caitlin's ranch, too. It's all staying in the family." Bill sat back down, looking at Colleen. She gave him a nod, and finally he reached across the table, sticking out his hand to me. "Damn it, Carson. This is going to take some getting used to, but I'll accept your offer." I shook his hand, feeling the weight of the decision settling in. "This also means we'll need more help. Sam's going to be the head foreman now." I grinned. "And I can't wait to pull out all those fence posts I worked so hard on over there." Everyone laughed, and the rest of the night was filled with loud laughter and celebration. Caitlin and I stayed up late, and by the next morning, we were a little late for breakfast. But when we walked into the kitchen, everyone was still there, waiting for us. After breakfast, we all piled into the truck and drove over to the Double C Ranch so Caitlin could show off our new home. Everyone was impressed, and I noticed Colleen eyeing the renovated kitchen with a touch of envy. It took Caitlin and her mom about a month to furnish the place, and then we were ready to move in. On our wedding day, we were married right there on the Double C Ranch, surrounded by friends and family. Bill and his family were well known and well respected in the area, and ranchers from all over came to join us in celebration. As Caitlin's husband and the new owner of the Double C Ranch, I was warmly welcomed into their community. Later that night, Caitlin and I finally made it to our bed, where we spent the night together. We didn't leave that bed for most of the next day. On the third day of our marriage, I took Caitlin to Fiji for a tropical honeymoon. Our first roundup that year went smoothly, and we sent a lot of cattle to market, making a solid profit. A chunk of it went toward paying off the loan, but Caitlin's business was making good money, and we were living comfortably. We even built a new house for Sam, and now he's got a girlfriend who lives in town. Looks like another wedding might be on the way. A year later, Caitlin gave me the best news I could ever hear. We're expecting a baby. As for anyone who says I should have made Caitlin sign a prenup, well, they don't know Caitlin. She's nothing like Janice. Caitlin works hard at her job, takes care of our home, and loves me with everything she's got. Every time I look into her blue Irish eyes, I see nothing but love.